Hi, Brian. Do we have audio?
We do, yep. And the YouTube is recording and streaming, so we can start the meeting officially in about 1 minute.
All right.
Well, you live stream these now, huh?
It's easier that way.
Huh. You have to show me how to do that.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I have 5 p.m. On the dot, and we do have a quorum of committee members, so you can call the meeting to order.
Okay, we'll start with a roll call, and I will start reading it off. Brian Hamilton.
He is absent and excused this evening.
Okay, thank you. Alder Jackson. Not here. Kevin Munson.
I'm here.
Thank you. David Schwartz.
Present.
Thank you. Brian Shaw.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jack Young.
Here.
Thank you. And we have a quorum, and thank you for attending. We'll review proof of posting.
Yes, the meeting was posted in City Hall and on the city's website and at the airport.
Okay, thank you very much. I've reviewed the minutes. My only comment on that is one minor correction. There's just item number 3. It says public section, and I think the missing word is comment public section. So truly just a minor typo. Otherwise, I'm satisfied with the minutes as is, and if anybody has any input, please let us know. Okay, we'll accept the minutes as they are. Before I get to my chair report, I guess the question is, Brian, do we move some of the discussion items around for the Zoning Board of Appeal, or is that not going to be a time crunch issue?
I think because the Board of Zoning Appeals is meeting at about the same time, it would be appropriate to have the commission vote to move item number 2, discussion item number 2, up to ahead of committee reports, and then we'll go back and do the rest of the agenda in order.
Okay, fantastic. Then we'll just do a quick vote. Does anybody have any objection to just moving item number 2 to item number 1? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, thanks. Should we skip over my report, do that later, or just go right into discussion, Brian?
I would just do discussion item number 2, and then we'll go back to the top of the agenda and do committee reports, and then all the way down.
Okay. All right. So starting with item number 2, bottom line is information considering the potential action, if necessary, regarding the Aspen Commons lot variance in terms of height limitation. I guess the first thing I would point out, Brian, and that's deep down in the packet, is there is the FAA sign-off approval of the height variance. So the reason this is brought up as a discussion item is because it is a structure that is simply going into the airspace within the 3 nautical mile radius of the airport. It's an intrusion of about what did we say, about 20 feet. FAA, has approved it, and so really looking for at this point some input and comments from the commission, and if there's anything we want to convey for the record to the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding this, now's our chance.
For Mormon, this is Mark Opitz. May I make a quick comment to help with this?
Mhm.
So as you can see on the screen, the Greenway office building to the left, which is south of the proposed building, already is the same height. And yes, this exceeds the height limitation zoning ordinance, which is based on a map that has grids on it. It's not based on contours representing elevation gain from the airport. If we had contours, it's my understanding that this would show the area within the height limitation zoning. So if our HLZO was based on contours, it's my understanding, based on the FAA approval, that this would be acceptable to the FAA. I mean, that would be acceptable if our HLZO would be based on that, and it wouldn't even need a variance. But because our HLZO is based on a grid with cells, the cell applies to the value in the cell, which in this case is 1075, applies to that entire area. And this has triggered the variance process that is before the Zoning Board of Appeals tonight, and they're meeting right now. So I just want to provide that as some context.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
So again, I think just some input from commission members, and any other thoughts from a technical perspective from Rich, who obviously can give us that from a daily operating sense at the airport that Mark would take back. If you want to raise your hands, I can just then start doing it in order. Or if not, chime in.
Well, this is Richard Morey. The location and the height matching that of the surrounding building, it shouldn't really be a factor for, well, I don't think it will be a factor at all for the operations. On general principle, I don't like any height limitation zoning exceptions because we're giving away airspace we can't possibly get back. But in this case, I have no objections to it.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, you have your hand up?
Mute here. Okay, there, I'm unmuted. So yeah, a couple of things here. I realize it's not a safety issue and it doesn't violate the TERPs. I'd like to see the FAA actually make some sort of statement that it complies with Part 77. Excuse me. So 14 CFR 77, I'd like to see that. And also these other buildings that are 20 or 50 feet above that zoning ordinance or whatever, that grid ordinance or whatever, did they get FAA approval to build, to go ahead and build to that elevation? So that's something that, if not, then that should also be reviewed even after the fact, because it's a compliance issue. And the third thing is, this is something that I've been requesting is airport land use commission. Usually airports of our size or larger, have a land use commission, so we can say any development within 3 miles, statute miles of the geographic center of our airport, we have a chance to at least comment on that. So this is a good example where it looks like a couple of buildings over there exceeded the zoning height or the whatever height limitations were put over there, but it wasn't reviewed. And so I think that just from a compliance point of view, the FAA should, even though it's retroactive, they should take a look at that.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else? Okay. My only closing the remark would be just from kind of the big picture perspective, where I've sit and things you hear about in terms of future growth and development is, what if the airport wanted to lengthen a north-south runway. So right now, with a shorter runway and the aircraft that are limited for operating on that runway, this may be just fine. But if there was a longer north-south runway with larger aircraft, they obviously have different performance rates and climb rates. So I think my comment to the zoning board would be, think big, think way out into the future, and at least get some input from the commission first, and even make the FAA aware of that at that level. Jack, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I would, I appreciate your comments, David. That was essentially my line of questioning as well. Is that, you know, the FAA letter, my interpretation of it was that it spoke to the existing conditions at the airport and didn't take into consideration any other utilization, any other runways. I'm not saying that there is any other current expectations for use of a north-south runway. You know, we have higher minimums right now because of the structure of the airport for the existing 4,000-foot runway. I would imagine that this would become somewhat of a design consideration in any kind of approach if something were to happen north-south. Am I right on that?
I guess that would be a question for the BOA and FAA. So I think that's where we simply stand as a commission. Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the FAA will not look at any potential conflict unless that's an ongoing project or something that's on our list. And I know that it is no longer, isn't an ongoing project, the potential for extending that. Also with the existing towers directly south that would be in alignment, we've already discussed this, the probability of getting an instrument approach into the north-south runway would be very slight. So that is something that we took into account. And again, the FAA won't take into account things that aren't actually going to be happening at the airport.
Okay, thank you. So Brian Gatto and Mark Opitz, I guess we could just summarize our comments to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Point one, I think it would be a courtesy to the Airport Commission to get heads up on developments like this. Point two, let's make sure historically anything we've done in the area is always in line with where we're at currently. I guess maybe that's enough. We only need 2 points. How's that, Mark?
Yeah, I'll reflect the conversation and go off to the zoning board meeting now and share your perspective with them. I also noted that Rich, the airport manager, said that on general principle, doesn't like to see HLZO exceptions, but in this case, he has no objection. It shouldn't be a factor for operations because of the existing building and the tower to the south.
Right, and would we want to? It's really not an action item for voting on, but would we want the commission as a whole's opinion on exactly that statement? You know, how does the commission feel as a whole about any encroachment into the airspace? And maybe it's a fair thing to ask because it gives you an idea of at least where we're at right now.
The item is specific to this particular property, so I would caution against a general statement. I mean, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so good enough. Thank you for your time, Mark, and thank you for shuffling it around.
All right, thanks. Thanks for adjusting the agenda.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commission, for some input on that and some review. Okay, we'll just start back up at the top. Chair report. A couple things. In October, I attended an online seminar regarding the Swift R100. I don't know if anybody was at that. Maybe Rich was. I saw you nod your head. Nope. Okay. Bottom line is Swift is aggressively pursuing also 100 UL fuel. They're not at the point where GAMI is the other manufacturer. Appears that Swift is also continuing to pursue the STC route as well. I think they see it more expeditious than the other routes. Just a fun fact that I learned, what does the R mean? It actually means renewable. Up to 10% of something that is mysterious in the fuel is from a renewable source. The other fun fact that he they stressed during this was the FAA does not certify fuel. The FAA certifies engine and airframes to use a fuel. So that kind of explains just the whole process going on behind the scenes of really, like the ASTM testing and just making sure I guess it's really up to the manufacturers to do their diligence to demonstrate that this future product will simply be safe in all systems. So that was that. And the city, by the way, did approve and I can let Brian and Rich talk to that, but the funding subject to city attorney approval to do some runway repairs that are needed. Rich, if you can talk about that in your report and give a technical update. That's all I got. Thank you. And Rich, you're up.
All right. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, I've got 2 months worth of managers' reports and should have them in front of you, but I'll do a quick summary on them again. In August through September 1, 34 overflight or noise reports, 27 made by the same individual. They were made by the normal routine city site, direct emailing to the city, our phone number, and then the noise reporting phone number. I've responded to everyone who wished a response in person calling. No violations of FAA regulations were apparent in any of these reports. And we did have, at least in September, 1 transient aircraft not based here apparently didn't read the signs both inside the terminal and right by the runway as they taxied out, and did not follow the voluntary noise abatement procedure, generating a noise complaint. We spoke with that individual. No aircraft accidents or incidents on the field. And in September, we did, in August, we did a great deal of brush removal using a rented piece of equipment, able to remove the willows and various small trees growing in the ditch lines that are essentially unmanageable without this type of equipment. It's a tractor with a mower arm attached, articulating arm. It worked out very well. It was far more efficient and less expensive than using the goats and volunteers, in my humble opinion. No, and not only in my humble opinion, empirically, it was far less expensive and far more efficient. Okay, lots of events. Capital Flights Cruise In, another great success. My hat is off to Matt and Jade. They put a really good event on. It brings a lot of people in here. I've had noise complainers say, yeah, but we sure like the car show. So that's a good thing that's happening. EA Chapter 93 and hosted a Young Eagles event August 12th. Over 30 young people participated. I participated. It was, again, a wonderful event, getting young people involved in aviation. And we hosted a safety seminar, Maury Airplane Company, August 22nd. One of our instructors was presenting, and she did an absolutely wonderful job. Talking about the Willa Brown event, I will talk more about that in my next report. Girls in Aviation Day, we'll talk about that in my next report. And then the another safety seminar is coming up. We're basically doing one a month through the end of the year. Any questions about what would have been the September 7th report? Okay. Now, in October, we had considerably less noise or overflight reports. I don't have any reasons for that that I can come up with, other than there were 6. And one individual made 4 of them via the normal stuff. Again, no violations of FAA regulations were apparent in these reports. And everyone who asked to, I did follow up with contact. Again, no aircraft accidents or incidents. The mowing continues, as we can say, in airport maintenance. I will also point out that, well, let's go through this at the end, and then I'll talk about the runway repairs. Okay, August 18th, this is something I missed in the September report. We had Dream Flights, we hosted it. This was put on by Capri Senior Living in association with the national organization called Dream Flights. You get veterans out from this nursing home, and they get one-on-one flight in a Stearman biplane. I think, Kevin, you used to fly Stearman, if I remember correctly. Absolutely wonderful event. The families were there. The Capri put on a lunch for everyone. Very nicely done. We were happy and honored to be part of it. We hosted the Willa Brown Academy event. There were, I think, about 20 young people that were involved. Again, they got airplane rides. It was a full week of aviation activities. Only the last 3 days were at Maury Airplane Company in the conference room. Again, safety seminar. This was air traffic control. This was Meet the Controllers from Dane County Airport Tower. Very useful for the local pilots. We had over 40 pilots attend. And the Girls in Aviation event. What an incredible event on September 23rd. Volunteer stations, the fire department was there. We had aircraft of every type, helicopters, gyrocopters, seaplanes, you name it. And well over 100 people, young women, actually 130 young women or men signed up, but they had their families along. They had their brothers and sisters. Only one per family could be part of the event. That's the way it was set up. Very, very well done. Again, the Women in Aviation organization, the Madison chapter, put this on, cooperation with the International 99s, which is one of the original women's pilot organization, and the Chapter 93 people at EAA helped as well. Great event. I'm going to be running safety seminars. I'm presenting October 26th on winter ops. Not sure what we're doing in December 12th, but that's another event that's coming up. And as for the runway, we have, when we had that large flood quite a few years back in August, the drenching rain, the runway acted as a dam actually and retained a great deal of water north of that airport, reducing the pulse of water that came through the Pheasant Branch Creek. But as a result, the culverts where the North Branch goes underneath the airport or the runway were overwhelmed. They were not designed for that amount of flow. And that following year, we had small sink areas in the pavement that we filled with gravel and later with cement. And this has been an ongoing process. The culverts are intact. Culverts also had, well, intact to a certain extent. They have cutouts on them or holes for the cranes to attach the chains to actually move these things. They were blocked at one point, and we, in the construction, they use sand to cover over this, very fine sand as opposed to heavier gravel. Those plugs in those holes have disintegrated. So now the sand, basically when there's water and it's saturation or just plain old, is going through these holes, opening up gaps and causing issues with the runway with a little undercut. It is not an unsafe issue, but it's an ongoing maintenance issue, potentially an issue, problem. So we're going to be taking up the entire strip, replacing that sand with, I'm assuming, heavier gravel, and that should cause or be able to take care of any voids in the future and give us a runway that we won't have to worry about any type of erosion going on. So that's what we're going on. I don't know if you have the bid in the packet, but it seems very reasonable for the kind of work that they're going to do. I believe it's about a 2-day project. We'll have to close the runway and probably just close the airport operations. Should be able to operate off the grass. Yeah, I'm sure we can actually. So main runway will be closed at least 1 day, maybe 2.
That's too bad.
Thank you, Rich. Does anybody have any questions regarding the work? I think it was $16,500.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Wow. I remember that. That's great. Appreciate all the information, Rich. Thanks much.
Thank you.
So now we can get back to discussion item number 1. I'll just read off the title here, and then Brian will work through a format here. So it's consideration and potential action on Specialized Aviation Services Operation Agreement, which we call a SASO, simply with Capital Flight. Capital Flight LLC located at Middleton Municipal Airport, Maury Field, has an existing 5-year SASO agreement with the city to provide specialized aviation services operations at the airport, which ends in April 2024. Capital Flight is requesting to continue the SASO agreement and is asking for consideration to extend the terms longer than 5 years, closer to 25 years, to match the land lease terms. Mr. Matthew Hofelt, President of Capital Flight LLC, has indicated his this is a longer term is necessary for working with financial institutions on future finance and capital improvements in their facilities. As a point of reference, the fixed-based operator FBO contract is 5 years term, and the hangar land lease are 15. Okay, Brian. So, like a format here, I think it would be important to hear from Capital Flight on this. Would it be okay, Capital Flight, discuss or present, and then back to the commission?
Yes, I think it's fine to have Capital Flight provide their rationale for the request, and then members of the commission can ask any questions and then have a discussion on what, if any, action they'd like to take on the item.
Okay, thank you. You have the control there, Brian, and I see that Jade and Matt are here, so whichever one of them wants to speak, you have the floor.
All right, well, thank you. Matt Hofelt here. Dave, you did a great job of really succinctly explaining why we're doing this. Our original agreement comes up here in the spring, and it was time to revisit that. The reason that we're asking for longer terms, of course, is that as mortgage holders here at the airport, and with the potential of new and more projects, being able to do financing, of course, for those projects is something that is a part of the business. So having a term that we can operate that business to be able to better mesh with that is an important thing. But other than that, it's no change of our agreement other than length of term.
Great. Anything else, or would commissioners like to just raise your hand and ask any questions of Capital Flight? David Schaefer. Oh, and then next, Kevin. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. And I asked this not just of Matt, but of other people who've had experience on the commission historically. I noticed that the agreement, the original agreement, had a first 5-year deferral of any compensation back to the city. And the new agreement calls for the same thing. And I'm wondering what the basis of that is and what the normal procedures are as to whether or not fees are typically requested or collected for such business operations on the airfield.
Yeah, I can't speak to the specifics on that. I was not with the city of Middleton when this first agreement was put together in 2019, so I don't have any specifics on the rationale for how it was originally crafted.
Okay.
Well, then a follow-up question, I guess, for Matt would be, when you originally entered into this and you had in the agreement the first 5 years as a deferral for any fees, was it your intent or understanding that there would never be any fees paid even with future agreements, or what was your understanding regarding that?
Yeah.
And I'll put it in the context of, when I read an agreement that says that there's a deferral of fees for the first 5 years, there's an implication there that there was an intent to have fees after that. That may or may not be true, but that's kind of what my questioning is coming from, the way that language reads.
Yeah, I guess I would say that, you know, the city, I'm sure, doesn't want to box themselves into any corner, and never is, of course, nothing that you could ever say. So never say never. As it relates to, you know, my feeling about charging a business to do business, I guess that depends on how much you want business and how friendly, you know, a municipality is to a business. As it relates to friends and colleagues, it's sort of all over the board. But I would say that airports charging a business a fee to be there is rarer than charging a fee to be there. The other part that I would, you know, say about that is we pay a commercial sized land lease for our facilities, as opposed to the smaller, you know, the smaller land lease rates. I think there's actually 3 tiers, but so that is part of our current land lease.
Thank you. David, were you looking for any follow-up on this from the city that Brian could make note of, or?
I mean, just any information. Like I say, I just want to make sure that we understand what the intent of the city is regarding such business practices. And Matt just expressed his understanding of it, and that's I guess just whether or not there's any confirmation of that through the city, and but at least I have an understanding now based on what Matt said of what his position on it is. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Could we interpret that as maybe some advice from a commission member to the city to maybe, it could be a future item, but to look at that portion of these contracts and clarify the language? Okay, I see Brian nodding his head. Okay, great. Excellent, thank you. Kevin, you're next, and then Rich.
Yeah, so I had a few questions here, you know, or a few statements, concerns. I think it's important. First of all, I went back and did a search, and it does look like, whether it's a SASO or whether it's a FBO contract, that they're usually a little, you know, I have to agree with Matt on this, and maybe after I'm done talking, Rich can jump in, but it seems like, yeah, some of these contracts are longer, you know, especially around the 15-year mark, you know, maybe 25 is a little long because that goes beyond the airport master plan that we do every 20 years or whatever. So that is something that's fairly consistent, to have longer term leases. And as Matt said, for, you know, just business concerns and getting funding for new projects and all of that. The second thing was, you know, how did we come up with, maybe someone can address this, how did we come up with 5 years where leases for FBOs and SASOs and things like that are typically longer, and the The third thing is that we have to consider is that, fair business practices, commercial business practices on the field. So, whatever we do for Matt, we should do for Moray Field also. So there's, I know that I'm throwing a lot of variables in there, but that's my couple of days of research. Those are some of the questions I have. If anyone knows off the top of their head what the answer to any of those are, that would be great.
Okay, thank you for your input, Kevin. And Rich, you're next.
Okay, oops, hold on. I'm attempting to unmute, stand by.
Oh, I hear you. You're
Oh, you
good.
can, oh, good.
Yes.
All right, give you, first off, I just looking at to the term, the city has always been more comfortable with the 5-year for some reason. When I renewed my contract about 1.5 years ago, I requested 10 years, much with the same reasoning as Matt has put, which is quite valid. And the city was not interested in a 10-year extension. They went with the 5-year for Moray Airplane Company, despite our 20-year record.
Oh, we have a technical issue with Rich. Give him a sec. We may have lost him. Does anybody else like to keep rolling with some comments? And Brian Shaw, go ahead.
Yeah, I think 5 years seems to be what the trend is, and I guess going off of what Rich was saying, if his 10-year was denied, I think 25 years sounds like a really long time, especially if it's past what the master plan is set for. So my recommendation would be to keep it to the 5 that's in the contract.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just a point of information, the way that the prior contract for 2019 is written is that, excuse me, it's 5 years with an extension option for another 5 years. So in essence, assuming that there is no issues amongst the parties, it would generally speaking be a 10-year contract with that extension baked in.
Gotcha. Okay, Jack's hand is up, and then David Schwartz again.
And Dave, if I could make a comment real
Matt?
quick.
Yes, please.
And it's the operation of the business, really what we're asking for in terms of that term is about financing. So, we are making large capital improvements, new facilities, upgraded facilities, things like that. And I think most of you would agree, if you're going to take the risk of expanding your business and having to pay for that, as opposed to renting a building, for example, that changes the optics. So if the airport commission is wishing to what I would call stymie investment in the airport, then make the terms short and keep that flexibility. But if the goal is to allow people to invest into the business and then into the airport, then I would reposition that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you very much. Rich, you're back, and you got cut off.
Yeah.
You're saying I was
Where were,
for 20, and then that was it. You disappeared.
I'm sorry, where was it?
You said the word 20 and then disappeared.
Okay. Well, again, when we went to renew our contract and requested it for a 10-year term, we were turned down on that, again, for reasons that Matt had. We had the same arguments that Matt's bringing up. So for whatever reason, the city seems comfortable with the 5-year term, or did. Again, initially with the contract, first 10 years, we were running $2,000 a month payment to the city to operate there. That was not profitable for Moray Airplane Company. At the end or as we went to renegotiate for my third 5-year, requested that the city do research, and they discovered that basically there is no standard agreement with FBOs or SASOs for that matter. Every airport runs it on their own, but if you looked at like size airports, they were not, the FBOs were not paying the city anything, and many times the city was subsidizing the FBO operation simply to have an operation on the field. Marshfield, for instance, doesn't pay a penny for its use of the terminal. So it's all over the board, but certainly on the smaller markets, you're not seeing a fee structure for fixed base operations. With the bigger airports, probably that's going to happen, but we're not seeing it at the small. Just to give you the historical perspective of where we are with the city and the fee structures. So after that, on my thought, the third renewal for Maury Airplane Company, that provision of payment per month was dropped.
Okay. Thank you. David Schwartz, please.
Sure. Just first of all, I agree with Kevin that whatever agreements the city's giving out, I would hope they would be equitable between any of the other parties that have comparable types of agreements or arrangements. So that's just one comment. And then the other comment, I want to go back and Brian, you mentioned the renewal after 5 years. I'd want to go back and read the agreement, but when I first read it, yes, there's a renewal in there, but I don't believe it's an automatic renewal. There were too many terms in there that were negotiable, so that I don't think it's automatic to get a renewal. I think the way it's written, after 5 years, you're going to have to come back in and negotiate and make sure that both parties are willing to go ahead, or however many years you make it, if it's written the way it's written. So those are my only additional comments.
Thank you. Jack, you're next.
Yeah, I guess I'm not, the city's looking for our input and guidance as to the operations of the airport or things that occur at the airport. I'm not sure that they're going to listen or care much about what we think about necessarily the lease structure. I'm sure they have that pretty well. I'm sure they have their standards. I think my feedback or my input on what's happening though would be we value the contributions of the businesses that are on the field right now. My opinion as a frequent user is they're extremely complementary. I use both of the organizations. If as a commission, my advice to the city would be give these guys flexibility and the length of term that is as advantageous as they can to help them. I completely understand, Matt, what you're going through from a financing perspective and what that means, and likewise, Rich, from a stability of operations perspective. Recommendation would be give them as long a lease term as you can, and we find their services are incredibly valuable and add to the greater good of the airport.
Great, thank you very much. Rich, your hand's up again.
Yeah, just again, something that I don't know if everyone here is aware of commission-wise, but the FAA has a provision in our grant assurances that no favoritism can be shown for one operation or another over. So it should be equitable. Just for what it is worth, that is something that's actually built into our grant assurances. You could argue that lease length or term may not necessarily be part of that. I would argue that it actually is. So.
Well, that's a real important point that may require some investigation on the city's part, because exactly that, we want to always make sure we are in compliance. David Schwartz.
Yeah, consistent with that, with whatever recommendation we make, if we make a recommendation that the city consider, for all the valid reasons that have been stated, that the city consider something greater than 5 years, that we include in that a recommendation that they equalize that for Maury Airplane Company.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments or thoughts regarding this? Okay. sort of saving my thoughts as well. So I did a little research as well. One of the things I did is I wanted to know what Waukesha is up to. And the reason being is Capital Flight is working towards and planning development out there. And Waukesha has a multiple service aeronautical service agreement that was approved for 30 years in August of 2021. And that was, and Mark and Matt, if I'm wrong, correct me, that was to Capital Flight.
That is correct.
Okay. The other thing I noticed with Waukesha is their FBO agreement is for 20 years. So that's for their, their current FBO operator.
Well, Dave, there are two current FBOs, Steins and Atlantic, and it's
Okay.
a little, as it relates to SASO versus FBO, we're starting to get into the weeds a little bit of it, but
Yep.
The Atlantic FBO rents the county's building, and Steins owns their own. So I'm not sure if there's a difference. And ultimately,
Yeah, I think this was just, this is just the FBO agreement to be an FBO operator, which would be separate from a lease agreement. Just, I guess, very much like we have here, you can lease the land or lease the property or facilities. That's one separate agreement. But then there's the agreement to provide an operational service, whether it be a manager that Rich does and an FBO that Rich does, which two separate agreements. Yeah, I guess my point in that is that our neighbors, all of their agreements certainly are beyond 5 years. To simply illustrate that. And I think also, as we just stated in our opening statement, even our land leases are at least out to 15 years. And that was just my observation. And summarizing what the commission has said, I think whatever recommendation we make, it has to be based off consistency and fairness. So if we're going to recommend I don't want to call it an exception, but we'll call it a change, a rewrite, a revision in contract, then for capital, then we simply have to extend the same to Maury. And I think also to Jack's point, as a business operation, a business entity, it's important to, demonstrate the longevity and commitment of a business and business operation from that standpoint. And 5 years is a pretty short window. So those are my thoughts, and kind of summarizing it. I guess what I'm saying is, personally, I'm also in favor of coming up with a solution that recommends to the Common Council that we look at an extended SASO agreement beyond 5 years. But with that, then we have to also recommend to the Common Council that we're going to have to make sure all the agreements are in alignment with that. So I'd look to Brian, I'd say that we then put something together here to get in front of the Common Council, because they simply have to vote on it. And so I think starting, I guess, first as a commission, we're going to have to come up with a number, a term, and we're going to have to agree on that.
Yeah, so the suggestion would be
Brian,
is that a member of the commission could make a motion, kind of a two-part motion as you've laid out, suggesting a term length for the contract, whatever that number of years is, whether it be 5, 10, 15, whatever the number is, as part one of the motion. And then part two, the motion would be for the city to examine and realign other similar contracts to that timeframe, whatever you've chosen.
Yeah, and I guess what I would put in motion number 2 to the Common Council is that this has to be, then it has to be consistent to Rich's comment regarding not expressing favoritism. Okay, I got a couple hands up here, and I didn't see who was first, whether it was Rich or Dave. But I'll just go ahead with Rich.
Oh, okay. I was going to defer to Dave. Now, just for the record, Maury Airplane Company would be very happy to have our contract extended from its 5-year to a 10-year process. We would be less happy to stay with the 5-year and have to go at the end of it, try to and/or renew again for a 10.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And Brian has noted that. David, please.
Sure, thanks. I'm going to make a couple of motions here. So my first motion would be to allow a contract for 15 years to Capital Flight. And then the second motion would be to advise the council that pursuant to FAA requirements of fairness and equality amongst vendors, that the Maury Airplane Company contract be similarly addressed as a 15-year contract.
Okay. And I'm just getting into the weeds of that. Because we already have a 15-year lease, maybe it's just a palatable number all the way across the board.
That's exactly why I came up with the 15.
Okay, well, that's why we have a commission. Okay, so do we have any additional discussion regarding?
Mr. Chair, we need a second on both those motions if.
Okay. So let's ask for a second. Brian, please start over, and then just keep me on track. So do we have to do each motion separately, or does?
Since he made them in 2 separate motions, yes, it'd just be easier for the record.
Okay, so the first motion is
to recommend to the city council an extension, or to recommend to the city council a SASO contract to Capital Flight with a lease term of 15 years.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay,
This is Kevin.
all right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Do you have any opposed?
Yes.
And we have 1 opposed.
Okay. And then on the second motion, it's been moved, but there needs to be a second on that. That motion would be pursuant to FAA regulations for equity and fairness, that the Maury Airport contract also be extended to the same 15-year term.
Would we need to put in there that, I don't know, future contracts, all contracts?
Yes, that can be added.
Okay. Sounds like a, okay. Do we have a second to, for our recommendation to Common Council that this also be extended to Maury, and that future agreements also be brought out to the same point?
I'll second Kevin.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
And 1 opposed. Okay. So at this point, then I think probably the next step is Brian will get this on a Common Council agenda.
Yep.
And it'll simply be presented. Keep an eye open, for that in simply the city agenda postings, and we'll have a sense of the time frame from there. We have any other thoughts before we move on to the next piece? Okay. Item number 3, noise contours related to information in the master plan. I just brought this up. This is really more for an informational discussion and point. for clarification, information, and that we always present this accurately. So the just checking the notes here. So what we have, I just want to first of all point out, Brian, on the city's website under the FAQ section, we have a section missing that related to noise, and it's what collaboration efforts are underway to help reduce noise. That section is simply missing. And then secondly, I just noticed a formatting problem with the why can't aircraft follow roads or specific routes. There's just some formatting issues there that have to be fixed.
Okay.
And then finally, the noise abatement diagram is simply missing. So I wanted us just to have a brief review of this, because these contours are in the master plan. There's certainly been misinformation regarding airport noise levels. And Brian, if you wanted to just pull that up and scroll way down to the start of it. I think down on, okay, and you've got that up, thank you. So what we have right there on that graph is basically the impact of noise and noise levels. And it's pretty easy to understand. What I wanted to point out was that, based on a majority of the activity out at the airport, which, is the training operations. And if you now go to the actual contours, you'll see that the training operation contours all fall within the, that'll be on the, yep. You'll see that the highest level of noise is actually limited right to the airport services, and within the footprint of the airport. And when you get to the outer perimeter, you'll see the blue contour line, which takes us back to a much lower decibel level. So wanted to point out the relevance of this to the commission, to the community, that a majority of the aircraft traffic at the airport, which accounts for our two flight schools and training operations, and a majority of that higher decibel level is limited to the contours within the airport property. And that's really about it. Does anybody have any comments or discussion or thoughts on where we left off with the noise on that? Okay. Brian, let's start on item number 4, consideration and potential action on our proposed budget.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple things to highlight here. As it is with the whole city budget, the airport budget is pretty much a cost to continue operations budget. There's not a whole lot of variance from years past, just a couple of adjustments to some MEDC land rent on the revenue side. And then on the operating side, and this is for fiscal year 2024, so upcoming fiscal year. On the expenditure side, not a whole lot of difference. We did add some additional funds back in for prairie maintenance, and Rich talked about the work that was being done earlier this summer on that. And we want to kind of continue that to keep a handle on those invasive species as they pop up around the airport. But beyond those things, pretty straightforward. No major adjustments in the operating budget. On the capital budget side, so we budget for operations and capital separately. Operations is kind of from tax levy funds, capital, large ticket capital items, generally speaking, are through capital borrowing, so going out to bonding each year for that, and then tax levy revenue is used to buy or to pay for the debt service on those borrows. But in the case for the airport operations, it's a little bit different because a number of our projects are typically eligible for the Bureau of Aeronautics grant petition process, and we've had BOA staff in prior months to kind of talk through that. The only real item that we've got for 2024, if you give me 1 second here, and we talked about this with BOA staff earlier this summer, was the potential replacement of the automated weather observation system, because that's coming towards the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced. And then the additional concern was brought up about the localizer navigation system also being kind of a similar technology age where it's coming to the end of its useful life. I don't have hard data on the cost for the replacement of the localizer system yet. We need to hear back from BOA on that. The cost for the replacement of the AWOS is approximately $150,000 given the type of system that we have in place today. And there is, the possible for cost share with the BOA for that particular piece of equipment. So we're showing this as kind of a placeholder in the 2024 capital budget for the city. And as we get additional information from BOA, we'll update that. But that's really the big piece for 2024. As we look out into future years for the airport, really the only things that we've got for major capital issues are the design, and then separately the construction, the actual construction activity for the runway and the taxiways. And again, based upon the policy guidance from the Airport Commission and the Council, it is replacing the runways in kind, if you will. So dimensions being the same as they are today, the 4,000 foot runways would be replaced as it is, not expanded, but kept at the 4,000 foot. And those are in out years in 2026 and 27 and 28 is when we'd be doing the bulk of that work. And we already have those items in our existing petition for BOA for funding consideration. But those are really the big ticket things on the horizon. But specifically for 2024, the only capital item that we're even considering is the replacement of AWOS, and that will be contingent on BOA funding.
Okay, thank you very much. Does the commission have any questions for Brian? Okay, thanks very much.
Yes, and then the second item, financial related, is just a quick summary of our monthly financial statements. I'll just pull that up here. Give me 1 second. Again, pretty standard, no major, sorry, just give me 1 second to zoom in. No major tweaks or changes here. And again, these statements, when we get them from finance, are maybe a couple weeks behind any current payments or receivables that are outstanding. So there's always an adjustment for your next month of anything that we might see this month. But again, no major issues of concern that I've heard from finance department. We continue to kind of plug along. Excellent.
Thank you very much. How nice it is to have a boring financial conversation. Appreciate that. Okay, next will be our discussion regarding potential action on comments. Brian had some follow-up on that, and go ahead, Brian.
Yes, I'll pull this up here on the screen. There was a question from members of the commission to have the city attorney take a look at this and provide any feedback or commentary. I had both of our city attorneys take a look at it. The only real item that they asked for some reconsideration on is the time limit of 15 minutes. Their suggestion was just to delete that section altogether and just have the 3-minute limit on per speaker as we do with the city council. But then everything else would be the same. Not a requirement, but just for courtesy, ask of any speakers to provide a heads up notice to us so we can kind of organize that prior to a meeting starting, but really just being clear that it's 3 minutes and it's one-way transmittal of information. By that I mean the speakers are welcome to provide comments within that three-minute period, but there wouldn't be a back and forth discussion between members of the commission and whoever the speaker is, just receiving information from whomever the speakers are. So other than that, the city attorneys were fine with the comment period, with the exception of the one section they suggested we remove here, this first bullet point.
Okay. Do we, as a commission, need to comment on that? Or, I mean, bottom line is, this is what the city attorney recommends, we simply roll with it, right?
I do have a concern if we take that 15 minutes out. I think there needs to be some language in there that allows the commission or the chair of the commission to cut off public comment at some point. If you don't have a time limit, the meeting could be hijacked by people making comments. Oh, I've got a 3-minute comment. I've got a 3-minute comment. And you get 10 people with 3-minute comments, and all of a sudden we've used up more than half of the time period of our meeting. So it's fine to take the 15-minute specifics out of there, but I think it would be very beneficial to have at least some authority to cut it off to continue with the other matters on the agenda.
Yeah, and I think actually I've sat in on common council meetings where at the beginning of the meeting, they simply said, well, we're limited on time tonight, and we'll limit our public comment period to say half hour, and additional comments will be accepted in writing, you know, or something like that. So, right, if we realize we have a time constraint, would it be fair to simply state that at the beginning of the meeting? I guess Brian can find out.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd like to have me have the city attorney weigh in on that, I'd be happy to do that, and can bring this back at a next meeting potentially with his feedback on that question, and if there's any options he suggests.
Okay. Kevin, you've got your hand up.
Sure, yeah, I'm in agreement with David and you, David, both Davids. And this has happened with our meetings where we could be 45 minutes, maybe even an hour into our commissioners' meetings, and we're still hearing complaints or comments or whatever over and over again, the same thing, and it's impacted our ability to get through the agenda. And so I'm in agreement.
Okay, thank you. Just to lob something out there, this is just some information I learned. This is probably a bigger issue for the Common Council discussion with committee as the whole, but I learned that there's a couple state statutes, 19.83, I guess paragraph 2, and 19.84 paragraph 2. And this is very interesting. These provisions allow that a government body may actually discuss any matter raised by the public during a comment period. And the Department of Justice open meetings laws recommends that responses to matters raised on a subject that was not included in the meeting notice should be limited. So if you're there in your head, this is kind of maybe a revelation, maybe not, but so the airport commission we can't go off and kind of be rogue on our own and say, this is the state statute. So if somebody makes a public comment, during the beginning of one of our meetings, and it's relevant obviously to the meeting, a member or the chair could respond back to that person during that period. So I think that's something the Common Council is going to have to review in light of these available statutes. But I wanted to throw it out there as a point of information. Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, we worked along those lines in the past. It's a very slippery slope and it didn't work that well. I think it's far better to consider what has been stated and then respond to it perhaps at the next meeting if it is important enough to put on the agenda, rather than to respond immediately to a statement. Even something along the lines of the solar panels are going to drip lead into the groundwater. Well, no, there's no lead in the solar panels. We could respond to that, but getting into a back and forth is not very productive in my past experience, which is why we stopped doing it.
Yeah, and I agree. But it was interesting. I learned about these two statutes, and so I just wanted to throw them out there. It would not be a desirable situation to start going back and forth with the public. It wouldn't. But it's there. Okay. Brian, do you need anything from us unanimously?
No, again, just discussion. And so there's some additional questions that need to be answered. So like I said, I'll spend some time with the city attorney on trying to address those questions. And when it's ready, I'll bring it back for further discussion and action by the commission.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on to the last piece, future events. We'll put on the next meeting a presentation that Kevin Munson has put together. Kevin already gave that title to Brian, so we'll get it on there. We just have some ongoing future agenda items. And this would be working with the city, coming up with maybe a plain language statement document just about the future of unleaded fuel. We'll keep following up on BOA petition status. So if something comes up, Brian will throw that actually on the meeting, just so it may not be just at this point we know about it, but just know this, that behind the scenes, Brian will just get it on our meetings and it'll pop up. The question is, based on tonight's discussion, do we want a future item where the AC would have a statement, call it statement or recommendation for future adoption by the city regarding airspace encroachment? So I don't know how you want to phrase that into a future item, but we could put that on a future item as well. Otherwise, I don't think I really have anything else. My comment would be moving forward with future agenda items. I don't want us to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. So if we have, some relevant information, let's have a meeting. And we, especially obviously information from the city, news and updates as well. So also, but sticking true to the mission of the commission, we are here to be educational and inform and keep the city abreast to all things aviation. So as with the presentation that Kevin's put together for the future, if we have some other things and we can group that together, that would be good at a future meeting as well. Because I think we're doing the city justice anytime we have an opportunity to educate people about airport operations and all the things related. So, and that's it. Are we missing any future items, Brian, that you can think of?
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay. All right. Well, at that, I'll call our meeting adjourned. I appreciate everybody's time tonight. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in the future.